can't say enough positive things about Vic Mariano. He is the founder of Mariano Co, a design firm that has become an absolute powerhouse here in the Phoenix area. Vic is that perfect balance of former corporate structure and systems and entrepreneurial spirit. He made a promise to his clients long ago to be their contractor for life. And it shows up not just in the messaging on the mission, vision, values on the wall, but in everything that he does. You can tell he really means it. At our conversation, he opens up about growing up in Louisiana, the accidental plane ride that landed him in Arizona, and the business failure that shaped what kind of leader he is today. We talk systems, communication, and culture, but also resilience, trust, and how emotional intelligence is the quiet force behind everything he does. I'm so grateful to Vic for giving me the time. And if you're looking for advice on how to build something meaningful, something that lasts, then this masterclass is for you. Let's dive in to our conversation with Vic Mariano.
So I don't think there's a better place to start than the beginning. And I would love to know a little bit about you, where you grew up, and kind of what kind of kid were you? Were you the builder, the founder? Tell me about your childhood a little bit.
Well, I didn't have anything to do with construction, that's for sure. So, my dad was not a plumber or electrician or anything like that. So I grew up, middle, income household, was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Okay.
We lived there, in Louisiana, New Orleans area until I was about 12, and then we moved to Oklahoma. So then I finished high school and college there. And, then I got a job in the semiconductor industry of all places. So I ended up out here in Mesa by accident as well, because, what I was doing for Texas Instruments at the time, was in very high demand. And so I'd gone to these additional schools after college to learn how to work on this certain set of equipment. Because I was in such high demand, I went to a job fair with a friend just to go along and tag along because he was looking for a new job. And it turned out that they were offering people plane tickets right then to sign up to come to Phoenix, Arizona. And I thought to myself, as a young 21-year-old, that, wow, it'd be nice to see the sand dunes. I've never been to the desert.
Okay.
So I took him up on the offer, came out here. And the funny thing is that I literally, hadn't flown very often, from when I was a kid. So when, we were coming into Sky Harbor and I was looking out the window at all the palm trees and the pools, I thought that I actually got on the wrong plane and I was headed to California. So, that's my first experience with Arizona. To my surprise, as I was driving around in my rental car, I was telling, of course, we didn't have cell phones back in 1988. So I had to call my wife, on the phone in the room and tell her, you would not believe this place. This place is pretty amazing. So short time later, we ended up making a decision for us to move out here, and I joined Motorola, who at the time was, they were like the number one, employer here in Arizona. We actually had 65,000 people at the time, working for Motorola within Arizona alone.
That's a interesting path from Louisiana to Arizona. So how many years have you been out here now?
So I moved out here in 1988. In 98, chasing the corporate ladder, we moved to Scotland, with Motorola. So my children were pretty small at the time. I spent 2 years almost to the day over there. Again, just, doing my thing to become, a corporate, a future corporate exec is what my career path was, that I was on. So I did that assignment, came back. We ended up moving to Albuquerque, for a few years. And then I ended up leaving, semiconductor and going into business for myself. I bought a business that did not turn out so well. I actually had, received a PhD in the School of Hard Knocks.
Yep.
I learned a lot about what I didn't know in life,
Yeah.
and in business. I was good at what I did in the corporate world, but I wasn't really good, at a lot of things. And so that was during the 2004 to 2008 timeframe as well. Everyone was having trouble. It just so happens that the business that I owned was directly tied to the truck and SUV market. And when the gas prices went crazy, things went bad in a hurry.
Copy that.
Yes.
So you've touched on something that you really don't have what I would call kind of the typical road to entrepreneurship. I feel like a lot of individuals that open their own company either grew up with someone who owned their own company, or maybe they came out of college and said, I'm just going to start my own business. But you climbed the corporate ladder, as you said, you were in the business work for a while and then you tried a business. Help me understand how you entered into the real estate space and kind of flipping homes in Arizona, because that was kind of the start of Mariano, is that right?
Yeah, so from that, we moved back out to Arizona, and he owned him and his brother owned a custom cabinet company, and he was always building homes on the site.
Yeah.
So it was when we hung out, he was always doing something in building. He never rested. One day he had said, we should try our hand out on this corporate on the courthouse steps.
Mm.
And I was like, well, what is that all about? And he goes, well, the foreclosure, they're selling homes, on pennies on the dollar. So we went down and we did one, then we did two, then we did three, really enjoyed that, and kind of built the name. So we had started two separate companies. And, by the time that the New York, Wall Street guys came to town with their big deep pockets and ruined the courthouse steps because they were overpaying for properties to turn them into rentals. Luckily, built the name for the remodeling space and was able to continue and step into that. And 16 years later, here I am.
Do you mind if we talk a little bit about what business looked like for you during COVID? Because I know for me, I had a personal, my first actual experience purchasing a home during COVID. March 2020, started talking to a realtor and said we kept getting bought out, cash offers. I think we made 10 offers in the span of a few months, kept getting bought out. And luckily, there was a new build development out in Louisiana. We were able to put $1,000 down, and a few months later, we had a brand new house. And it was just a really interesting time to experience buying a home. I'd love to hear a little bit about yours and your company experience during COVID, what that looked like for you.
Yeah. So during COVID, things went mad, literally overnight. We used to do like one full home remodel at a time. And then we would have kitchens and bathrooms, and we would average somewhere between 24 and 32 projects at a time. When COVID hit and when they got hung up and got stuck in their houses for long periods of time, then they decided, instead of just wanting to do their kitchen that they've hated all their life, they hated their bathroom, and they decided they wanted the flooring changed at the same time. So we went from having one full home remodel at one time to having 3 or 4 at a time. So we actually grew during COVID, and we didn't have to lay anybody off. Obviously, during that time, there was challenges with your workforce, because when people, came down with COVID, the protocols that everyone had to go through back in the beginning, it was like a couple of weeks that you would be without someone uh, at work. So, and we had to make sure that we were abiding by it, because we didn't want to, we do a lot of work with 55 plus people, folks. And because of that, we didn't want to take anybody into a home that actually had any symptoms at all, because we didn't want to be responsible for giving someone that may have compromised health already the virus. So we were trying to be good stewards, but also make sure that we could take care of Mariano Co as well.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the 55 and up community, because I know that's a group that you all have served historically, and I didn't even think about it in reference to COVID. So that's a really good point, and it obviously shows the quality of character of you and your company, which is beautiful. It's interesting too. You mentioned you grew during COVID versus a lot of other industries who didn't. The one thing I didn't hear you mention was any issues with supply chain. Was that something that you ran into during COVID, or mostly it was getting over all of the workforce issues?
Yeah, everybody had supply chain issues. However, I think this is where my corporate background came into play, because then we actually were thinking outside the box. For example, cabinet delivery times went from 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes some of our suppliers were out to 28 weeks. So what we did is we broke up our design process. So we are actually a design build firm. So we do everything. We sell it. We have our designers that are on staff, which is a benefit for our clients, because they don't have to hire a designer separately. Then once we design it with the salesperson becomes the customer advocate. and they follow the client all the way through the whole process. So we designed it, and we broke up the design into 2 phases. We went and we selected cabinets. Once we selected cabinets, we put them on order. And so we burned up a lot of the lead time while we were actually doing the rest of the design, as well as all of our build documents that we were going to need for the construction.
So, are there things that y'all implemented or modified around your business operations during COVID that you kept post-pandemic because you just found it was the better way to go?
We actually kept that same process after COVID because it made it more seamless, and it fell in line with the deposits and kind of progress payments as well. Because we're not like most contractors where, you send them out to the client to go and find their own materials,
Yeah.
and let the contractor know what you picked, or worked with whoever the people, whether it was tile or cabinets or whatever the case may be. We control everything in-house. Not only do we sell it and design it, but we also procure all the materials as well. We have our own box trucks where we deliver to the jobs. Our business is built for people and it's a niche around people that need the design help, and want somebody that actually has their own people.
Yeah.
Because we have our own staff that do all of our work. So we do remodeling. All of our own people do all of that work. When it comes to sticks and bricks, where we're building homes or casitas or ADUs, we will use subs for that. The difference is that we want to make sure that anybody that's in direct contact with one of our clients hears from someone that's from Mariano Co.
Yeah.
That actually wears the shirt, as all of the badge of honor, if you will, so that when they're speaking with someone, they know that they are speaking to someone wanting us to be their contractor for life.
I'm hearing a really big, important thing from you about systems and process and things in-house under your brand. Um, but I also know just from reading about your company, it's not just about the systems and being efficient. It sounds like you have a very human-centric mission. And I wanted to ask a little bit about the Contractor for Life tagline. To me, that isn't just a tagline. It sounds like a true commitment and something that you live and breathe. So, am I on the right track there? What comes to mind when I say that?
I think that you're right, very much on track. For me, your contractor for life is like our mantra. That's what it's all about. For me, it's about seeing a client that is so happy with the results. Uh, not this weekend, but the weekend before, we had a client that actually, they did an open house. They had all their neighbors, had all their friends, and invited our whole company. And when I walked in, I hadn't met this particular lady, and she came up and she goes, "Are you him?" And I said, "Am I him?" And she goes, "Are you Vic?" And I said, "I am." And she hugged me so tight, and just thanked me and for my company and for the people and for how generous and kind. And she just went on and on. In her review that she wrote for us, she said, "I'm probably the only person that wished my project wouldn't have ended." She was sad that we were all gone. So that's a testament to the people that we have working at Mariano Co. I used to think that when I first started, and I was jaded from the corporate world, I hated mission, vision, and values. And the reason that I do is because even Enron, it had mission, vision, and values. And so when you have the higher ups that only do mission, vision, and values because that's the right thing to do in the corporate world, but yet you don't live by it day to day, there's a problem. And so one day, one of my friends came into this office and he asked me about where my mission, vision, and values were. And I like, "Watch it, buddy. Right? You need to get out of here with that." And he goes, "Oh, come on, Vic." He said, "If there's one thing I know about you," he goes, "you believe." Man, he said, "This is your company." So him and I literally went over to Chili's right around the corner, and on a napkin, we came up with mission, vision, and values, and what you see on the wall right there. And so we live and breathe it. So I start every meeting going over mission, vision, and values. I end every meeting going over mission, vision, and values. I actually do the team member handbook with every new team member. And you notice I didn't say employee, I said team member, because I can only do this much.
Yeah.
But if everybody lines up fingertip to fingertip, we can reach a lot of people, and do a lot of good. And so this is all part of what we're doing. Now, when you look at the mission, vision, and values, trustworthy, ownership, failing forward, finishing strong, exceeding expectations. They kind of seem like they're similar to others, but I've defined those. And so there's a reason that those are there. And I used to think that when you hire someone, you would tell them, I don't care where you come from, what's happened to you, or what's going on in your life. Between the hours of 7 and 3:30, this is what you're going to believe.
Yeah.
What we found out is that it didn't work. When you bring people in here that just don't fit into your culture, they tear things apart.
Yeah.
And if you're not aware of those things from a management point of view, they can poison that one apple, right? The one bad apple can poison the bunch, spoil the bunch. It is a true story. So when you see those things that happen, it's not just my responsibility, it's the whole team's responsibility to actually uproot that person and get them out of here. So I've told people for years and years and years, I said they have full autonomy to get rid of anyone that is not pulling their weight and helping us to become people's contractor for life. And it's happened several times over the last couple of years, which is awesome because I can't be everywhere like I used to be when we first started.
Sure. Are you familiar with Jocko Willink and the concept of extreme ownership? Essentially, that concept of the buck stops with you, right?
It does.
So how do you, as a leader, make sure that you are living your mission, vision, and values? You've already hit on a few things, right? You were part of defining it in the first place. You've made it visible throughout your company, both actually on the walls and on the website, but you also speak to them during meetings. And it sounds to me it's also woven into your hiring practice. Is that okay?
We start every project in the front yard of our new client, going over mission, vision, and values, reminding ourselves that the reason that we have this new client is because we did mission, vision, and values for someone else.
Okay.
And so the 350 plus 5-star reviews are real. Those are real reviews that we earned. And I say it like that because we really earned them. And you go and look at some contractors and you read the review and it says, Tommy came over and he changed the faucet.
Yeah.
Well, or Jimmy came over and installed the fan. Well, our projects average $75,000 and up. And so being in people's lives, in their homes, I should say, for 4 to 6 weeks or longer and still being able to get a 5-star customer review, to me is awesome. I mean, it takes a lot of work to make sure that you're on your game day in and day out. Now, I will tell you that failing forward, right, is the most important one that we have.
Tell me about that one.
So first of all, I'm a human being just like everybody else. So I have my own issues. By no means am I perfect, but I think that that's the key, is that you have to be able to admit it, right? And admit it, own it, and do something about it. So I'd like to think I'm pretty darn good at that, because I give myself lots of opportunities to make up for the mistakes that I've made. But failing forward is not about making the mistake, right? Because your character's not defined by do you make mistakes or not, because we all do.
Yeah.
Your character is going to be defined as to how you handle the mistake, right? And so that's what we want to make sure we're doing with our clients. We want to make sure we're fair, open, and honest. For example, we go into a remodel, we take a wall down, and we find something that the homeowner wasn't expecting. We weren't expecting it. It doesn't seem fair to me that I should gouge them in pricing to be able to take care of this. What's fair is if it's a plumbing issue, here's what I'll do for your Mr. and Mrs. homeowner. We need to get this taken care of because it's against code. So our plumber comes in, takes care of it, and then we let them pay our plumber direct. So that way it's fair for them. We need it done anyway. Everybody's sleeping in the end.
Is that standard practice in the industry or something you decided to do with custom?
When I came into this business, I brought what I used to do from the corporate world. And so one of the things that about contractors is that we're terrible at communicating. Well, the industry as contractors are terrible at communicating.
Sure.
My subs, the reason I have 2 different business lines, the remodeling and the new build, is because my subs were terrible at communicating. And I don't want them anywhere near my customers at all. I just don't want that, because they don't represent your contractor for life.
Yeah.
It just, now we're looking for this. We're always looking for subcontractors and vendors that actually represent the same values that we do. The reason that we let them pay direct is, number one, because I think it's the right thing to do. I can tell you that we have clients that are jaded because of their past remodeling and construction experience that they've had in the past. And we hear all the time, wow, right? You guys are truly amazing. You really are going to be our contractor for life. And there's a lot of things that go into making that. One thing that I think that sets us apart is communication.
Yeah.
Because when I came in my very first time at working with subs, and they're not calling you back, and they're going to be there at 7, and then they're not there at 7. They show up the next day at 7, and then they leave early, and they're not communicating. I'm like, if I was in the corporate world and did that, I mean, you'd be done in a minute. There's no way. So I refuse to let that happen. So what we've implemented, right, something simple, is that we actually send our clients a nightly email. So every night a client gets an email, and they know who's going to be there, what time they're going to be there, and what they're going to be working on every day, including the days that we're ahead of schedule. So we're calling or just emailing them, letting them know no one's going to be there that next day.
Okay, so that's something very different. I know from experience and from other colleagues that are in your space. That communication piece, but again, systems.
That's what it is. It's systems.
And I feel, I'm sure you know this as well, with the amount of growth that's happening in Phoenix in the housing industry, but also with businesses. I think we're 10th in the nation right now for new small business registrations, which is beautiful.
Right.
Low barrier to entry, but also there's plenty of businesses that start up and within 1-2 years they're failing. And I think it all really comes down to systems. And so I'm curious, it doesn't sound to me that you've done anything too complicated. You've kept things simple. You're very focused on your customer. You're very focused on your values, and you've made systems to save yourself time, energy, and money. To you in the corporate world, what are some things you would recommend to a new entrepreneur coming up today as pitfalls maybe they could avoid?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, right. So for me, I was in electronics engineering. So, and working in semiconductor industry, and I ended up in construction. So it's not necessarily my schooling that got me where I am. My friend that we were partners together, he didn't even go to college. So, and he's brilliant. I used to tell him all the time that everything he touched turned to gold. And then when we were partnering together and I got to see it day in and out, I then realized that it wasn't something that was always in the gold, but it never bothered him. Right? Setbacks, became comebacks. And so that's the mentality that he has. He was an extreme risk taker. I'm a very calculated risk taker. And so there's something in business is that you have to be willing to take risks. And it's something that I fight all the time, especially the business that I had, my first business that failed. The scarlet bee that you carry around for the rest of your life, the shame and the letting your family down and letting your team members down is a big deal, and it could scar you. But at this point in time, you have choices to make. So after about 6 months of licking my wounds, I had to decide whether I wanted to get up, dust myself off, and get back to it. And that's what I did. And so I would say that you have to be very tough, resilient, willing to make mistakes, and also recognize that when you start, you're starting from the beginning. So you can take baby risk. But as you get into business and you get to be more and more successful, the risks that you took in the beginning are minor compared to the risks you're going to be taking 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
So, and I think that the other piece to that would be a lifetime learner, right? Because you don't have to know everything about what you're doing now. I think the biggest thing is being comfortable in your own skin to be able to take a risk and step into it, because most people don't.
Yeah.
Most people won't do it at all. So I was lucky to have a friend that wanted me to be that. He drugged me through things on occasion to be able to do some of the things that I'm doing now. I'm still a calculated risk taker. I'd like to be a little bit more risky, but I always tell our team members that, this goes back to the failing forward, right? Some mistakes that happen in the field, right, are minor compared to the ones I can make.
Yeah.
I can make some big ones that can crater the company, right? They can't do that,
Yeah.
right? And so we have a comfort level because we've been doing this for 16 years. And I plan on, well, I don't know if I plan on another 16, but certainly I plan on the company being on for more than another 16 as time goes on. So those are two important ones: being able to take a risk and make sure that you are continuing to learn. And so however that is, I actually look into hiring coaches. And you got to be careful with coaches.
Yeah.
Because you can become friends with your coaches and then you're paying for friends, and you don't need to pay for friends. That's always that's always the sign that it's time for you to move on to the next level.
So, yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like we owe thank you definitely to your friend that drug you around, but it's always good to have a coach to help elevate your skill set and your businesses.
I gotta tell you, I've actually had so many fantastic mentors throughout my career, more than my fair share. I mean, I've had a bunch, and so I'm very grateful for that. And part of that's how I learned to be a lifetime learner. And when I was a kid growing up, I actually had issues with dyslexia. I had trouble reading. Now I actually spend lots of time reading, but I'll do an audio book, but I'll also have the hard copy. So I'm reading along and I'm making all my notes in my book, and it makes it to where I can get through material much quicker and several in a year, a lot in a year. So that's a helpful tip.
Yeah, you would love my setup in my office. I see your audiobook and your hard copy, but then I'll also be on the treadmill, and it sounds dangerous, but I promise I'm going very slow. I'll be listening, reading the book, and sometimes I'll be on the Kindle so I can highlight and make notes.
Right.
And I mean, even I feel if I had the ability to listen to an audiobook and also take notes and highlight virtually when I was in high school, no regrets, but I definitely feel I would have learned differently. You very self-aware, incredibly self-aware. Is that something that you intentionally developed, or did it just come over time?
I think my wife would say that I was aware. Self-aware.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Do you think
But
you're I suppose the answer might be obvious to some, but do you feel that you're very different as a leader, as a father, business owner, husband?
well, I am very aware that I can be very direct.
Mm,
Sometimes I'm also aware that when I get into something, I'm in it. My friends will tell you that whenever I decide to do something, I am in it 100%.
sure.
And if it's a sporting event, I'm buying the best of whatever it is to be able to do it so that there's no excuse that equipment was the issue. It happens to be the practitioner. That's the issue. But whatever it is, I commit. I'm 100% in. I don't lack passion. That is something that I carry around with me everywhere I go. I don't have problems motivating people. So I guess maybe saying that I'm not self-aware wouldn't be exactly true. So I had to think about it for a second and go, am I self-aware? I am self-aware. There's things that I know that I have to do as a leader, even when I don't want to. I'm aware of that. I'm aware that there are tough decisions that have to be made when you don't want to. I'm aware of that. So there are days when I want to sleep in, but I need to get up. So I have a practice of getting up at 4 and starting my day. So I work on mental, spiritual, physical, and then getting myself prepared for work. And so get all of that out of the way. And then I can do all of the studying and the work on the business stuff that I need to before I actually ever leave the house.
So you have a system for Vic as a human being, not just for the business.
Yes, and they spill. The lines are blurred,
Yeah.
and they go back and forth. People tell me my wife's told me for our whole marriage that I was a workaholic, but I don't see it that way. I love work. I love what I do, and when you love what you do, yeah, I mean, time doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So for me, as a business owner, I have the luxury of being able to work and fit what I need into the space of the 24 hours. So there's times I am an early riser. So I like getting up in the morning. I like being by myself in the morning. Sorry, honey. When the kids were young, they thought that I worked all the time. It was not until after they were grown and they were looking at the videos in the VHS, that or yeah, they were the VHS. Kids were looking at the videos that were taken and they were blown away that I was at all their events. And I'm like, why did you think that I was at your events? Well, because you work all the time. I'm like, yeah, but you got to make time for the important things. You go and you do your family stuff. And then when they all went to sleep, I was typically still ready to work, wasn't ready to go to sleep yet. So,
Yeah.
of course, I was much younger then, so I had a lot more energy.
I have to agree with you. I don't subscribe to the notion that you need to have work-life boundaries in the way I think that most people need it. I agree with you that if you're passionate about
Yeah.
what you do, And if you need to put in a 10, 12-hour day sometimes, to me, that's my opportunity to be working on my passion.
Mhm.
But I think it is much different for us as entrepreneurs and business owners. I did not love it when I was putting in 12 hours for someone else's dream. Was that the same for you? I mean, you struck me as someone who, even if you were driving the garbage truck or working the line at a fast food restaurant, you would strive to be the best at whatever you do. But did you have that mentality shift when you went from working for someone else to working for yourself?
I don't think so because I was always that way.
Okay.
In the corporate world as well. I always wanted to climb the ladder. I wanted to be the best. Everything that I did, I didn't want to be second place. I wanted to be looked at as the expert in whatever it was. I think the hard thing is going back to the question for new entrepreneurs, right? Is that no one loves your business more than you do. Right. And so no one's going to care about it as much as you do. And so if you're coming to your job and expecting your team members to build you up, that's not going to happen. So it's your job to be able to build them up. Now, the rub comes in is that you have the hourly team members and you have the exempt team members. And so some team members you have that are exempt work as if they're hourly, right? And so without ruffling feathers, you have to let people know, hey, when you're exempt from the labor laws. So that means that your job is to get it done, whether it's 40 hours or 80 hours, right? That is your job to get it done. So I don't think that people see it that way, even um, your younger generation of exempt, they look for work-life balance. And I can tell people it just doesn't exist. There's no way you're going to have balance in your life because you're going to end up having kids that are sick. That's going to interrupt balance. Pets that are sick, they're going to interrupt balance, whatever. You're going to have disagreements with your spouse or significant other that's going to disrupt your day and you will not have balance. So having work-life balance doesn't exist. You do what you have to do and you enjoy the time that you have for both.
I couldn't agree more. For a very brief moment in time, I managed coffee shop in a large coffee chain during COVID, and everyone on my team was significantly younger than me. They were probably in the range of 18 to 22. And at first, I didn't think that was a large gap. I'm in my early 30s at the time. But then that concept of work life balance and work ethic and gaps in generation, and just realizing, oh, they are not the way that I was when I was their age. I wanted to be the best I could be. I wanted to climb the ladder. I wanted to prove my worth. And I'm painting obviously with very broad brushes. Everyone's different, but it is interesting how different, I suppose, the workforce is coming up with that. Your kids are older though, and don't they work for you?
They do, yeah. So I have my son who's going to be 35 next month. My daughter who's 33, and then my daughter-in-law. Yeah, my son and his wife. They work here every day. My daughter works part-time for the company. She used to be our office manager, but now she's a stay-at-home mom with two little boys. So
Oh, beautiful.
yeah.
So I'm fascinated by this because I always find it so interesting. People who have their family that work for them, I feel like it can go great or really bad. Clearly, it's going well for you. So tell me, or maybe it looks like it.
No, well, there's always a learning.
They get involved in the business? Was it always planned to have your kids in the business, or how did it happen?
No, actually, I wanted them to go and do their own thing. So I pushed them out and wouldn't let them come and join the company at first. I wanted them to go and experience life. And because one of the things that I, as they were growing up, that I kept telling them is that you never want to say that the reason that you have the job you have is because your daddy owns it. That is a big slap in the face. So you need to go out and earn your stripes, come back, and then learn. And oh, by the way, when you come back, I'm going to be tougher on you than anybody else because I don't want anyone saying that the reason you got this job is because of your dad.
Yeah.
So trust me, you don't understand now, but you will. So Lucian and I, my son, we've had some really good conversations recently because obviously someday I'd like to retire and I would like for him to be the person that actually takes over. But he knows that that's not a guarantee. And there's not an expectation that he does that either. He has to want to do that. Not only does he have to want to do that, he has to earn the right to do that. So there's a lot of things he's got to learn. So he's grown so much over the last few years. And just recently he came to me, he said, I never knew.
Yeah.
And I said, you never knew what? And he goes, I never knew what you had to go through on a day-to-day basis and the stuff that you have to put up with and deal with. And I'm like, yeah. I said, but it comes with the territory. Right? So you keep moving, you stick to your guns, right? You stick to the mission, vision, and value, right? And keep holding up. It's tough sometimes because sometimes you want to throw the towel in and you go, you know what? I had enough. Screw this contractor for life thing. But, it's fleeting moments. So you have those moments and then you re-energize, you get set up, you get grounded again, right? You put your armor back on and you go to bed.
You mentioned that you're known for being direct, which I think can have a negative connotation to it in some circles. I don't subscribe to that. But I'm curious. I find you to present as a very empathetic person as well. Is that a true statement?
It's another one. Like me, I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know.
I'm getting the best version of you here, but hearing the way that you talk about your family, but also your customers, the community, I just hear a lot of empathy there. And maybe that's an accidental behavior that you
I'm obviously not that aware of that part of me. So, I can be a real jackass.
I think between you and me and the camera and the viewers, I think you have to be a little bit to be an entrepreneur.
I do, because in my mind, you get what you settle for in life. And so it's no one's responsibility except for yours.
Yeah.
And so, you can say this happened to me, that happened to me. No, it did happen to you, but what did you do with it?
Yeah.
Right? Did you use it as a lesson to learn something? And then what was your part in it? Right? How did you actually help manifest what happened to you? Now, I'm not talking about crimes or things that shouldn't happen to you. I'm not talking about those things, but we as individuals, and I do it too, because there's days that I wake up and I know that I'm supposed to be remarkably bold every day. And there's days that I'm not. I'm not remarkably bold. It's like, I don't like making cold calls. I just don't like doing it, but I have to. And then when I make them, no one talks about our business like I do. No one knows more about this business than me. If there's anyone that's going to be able to talk to somebody about the benefits of working with Mariano Co, it's me, right? And so I don't even know where that comes from and why I don't want to pick up the phone sometimes. But it's me. I have to do it. No, you can't make me do it. No one around here can make me do it. It's just part of what I have to do.
Yeah.
So anyway.
It's interesting that concept of self motivation, perhaps, and that willpower. I feel it's something a lot of people struggle with, but some of the most successful people in the world just don't seem to struggle with it, or they just make a conscious decision every day about what type of day they're going to have. Does that motivation for you, is that just something you've always had? Is it something that, like I said, you just have to get over those times? How do you stay motivated, or is it just something you get over and do it?
It's something that I just learned recently, and it shouldn't be something that I would have learned. You would have thought that it would just be a no brainer that everybody knew this. But my coach was talking about because he was a basketball coach, um, and the best players in the world, right? The Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, those guys put in extra time all the time. They were practice, 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 so that when they were playing, it was just natural.
Yeah.
Right. What happens to us when we get out of high school or whenever it is that you stop playing sports or whatever musical instrument or however you want to package this thing, you stop practicing and we start adulting and we don't practice what we do. We get up and we have a routine and we go to work, but we don't make ourselves better. And that's what my coach Michael Burke, he says that the best players in the world and the best entrepreneurs in the world, they train all the time. And so it's been interesting because we just had a record sales month last month. And, right now, most construction's down, but we've never been down. But we just had record last month. And the reason that we had a record last month is because me and my team, ended up going through a training course from Coach Michael Burt. And so the team started implementing the follow-up, different strategies for following up, not just phone calls, but the texting, the video texting as well. And it made a big difference. So last month, boom, record sales. This month, everybody's got a full schedule moving into April. And this is the time of year because not you could call it seasonal, but in May in construction, what happens is that we get a normal downtick because you got graduations, you got families where kids are getting out of school, so they're going on vacation. And so there's a lot of people that either having lots of company or they're going to be leaving town at the end of May. They don't want their house torn. So we know that, and we had 16 years of knowing that. So we actually 2 months ago went in and doubled down on our marketing efforts because we knew that we were going to need it so that we can make our way through the May timeframe. And so what happened is that we got more than we were anticipating.
Okay.
So that's always a good thing.
Well, and you also have the systems and the framework in place to handle that influx.
We do.
Well, I feel like a lot of times companies just are scrambling constantly for revenue, more clients. And so they decide to double down on marketing and put money behind Google Ads or whatever the case may be. And then they get all these calls coming in and these emails and texts, but don't have the framework to answer.
That is the most important thing and the thing that I worry about the most.
Yeah.
So we have a $100 million a year goal. To be. So we broke it into two halves. So we're working on the first 50 million now, but the timing of the 50 million is not the important thing. It's the structure that has to be in place for us to continue to move into that space. So we will be valley wide, but I'm very patient. And so I want to make sure that I can hire the right people that fit our culture that allow us to expand and grow at the right pace. So it's not about it for me where, oh, you need to grow at 50% per year or something crazy. There are a lot of people out there that are, advocating, if, you've got a 10-year goal to get there, but I can get you there in 5. It's like, yeah, but you want me to sell 3/4 of my company, right? And then go off and buy all these other companies with, that doesn't match your contractor for life. And they're like, yeah, but if you could do it in 5, you'd already done it. And I go, I'm protecting my assets,
Yeah.
right? In the pursuit of where it is that we're going. It's, I had one of my mentors told me, one-off shit wipes out 1,000 attaboys. And so you've got to be really careful in this business because, and I protect, I own that as a registered trademark, contractor for life. And so I treat it sacred. I mean, it is something that I protect. And so I let people know that no one's going to get in between Mariano Co and the goals that we're going. If you don't want to go, that's fine. You don't have to go, but you're not going to be here dragging anyone else down either. So.
All right. I love it. So 100 million a year, you said. What about 5, 10 years from now? You talked a little bit about retirement. I don't get the sense that you have any desire to slow down now, but what does the future look like for you? What do you want your legacy to look like for the company?
Yeah, well, I don't believe that you ever retire. I mean, nowhere in the Bible it talks about retiring. You work from to the end, right? And you work 6 days, by the way. People don't realize that we're supposed to work 6 days, or at least that's the way it was originally designed. Don't tell the people that want 40 hours a week, they're going to pass out. No, but so my actual personal mission is to create a safe environment for people so they have the opportunity to break the chains of bondage in their lives, therefore changing their destiny and the destiny in their family forever. That's what it's about for me. And so there's really no retirement time for that. For me, we pay family medical. As a small company, we pay matching 401ks as a small company. I pay very high wages for my team members, higher than most, because I'm building a team, not for today, but one for tomorrow and the next year, the legacy piece of that. And so if you're not treating people right, and holding people accountable, because everyone signs, they literally sign. When I go through the team member handbook, you're signing a piece of paper that says you understand mission, vision, and values, and you're going to do your part to help us become people's contractor for life. If you don't, this is grounds for immediate termination. Everyone signs it. And I remind everybody we're an at-will state. So that's the only reason I meet. So if you don't want to be a part of actually doing that, you're hurting all the other people here, because everybody needs to be pulling on the rope in the same direction. Because if you're not, then that affects our revenue. It also affects our profit margins. And we're spending a lot of money on our team members to create that safe space. Not now, but for always. That's what it's about. So I believe that money's good for what good money can do. So it's not about me necessarily. Do I expect to do well? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anyone that takes risk with their livelihood expects something in return. So I do expect to have a little bit extra when it's all said and done. But I don't really have any retirement plans. It's maybe I'll have a rocking chair, have some cigars, and rock on the porch and be on the board of directors.
A little bit of golf.
A little bit of golf here and there. Maybe 2 or 3 days a week. I don't know.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So no plans on slowing down and definitely work at least 6 days a week.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's because I don't see it as work. That's the issue. I can go and play. I can still go and play golf in the mornings and still work and put in that full. We could probably put in more time after a day of golf than most people do in a given day.
Yeah.
And not even feel like I'm working, right? Just because it's just what I just enjoy what I do. And I think it's more, I don't think it has anything to do with construction.
Yeah.
I think it would have been in any industry that I would have been in, because I would have been the best at it. And it's about the people that you interface with on a regular basis. I do like the fact that I actually have direct contact with customers.
Yeah.
Because I think that is the thing that brings it home. Like I said, last week we had an event with a client that actually had us over to her house. And it was amazing. It made you feel good. She actually came here to do a video testimonial on Friday, and not everybody in the room was crying. I mean, it was that genuine of an interview.
And that never happens.
Well, the interesting thing about the interview, she's actually in our industry, but she's in it from the insurance side of things.
Okay.
And so she's telling her colleagues about this wonderful company called Mariano Co, and how they email her every night and tell her who's going to be there and what time they're going to be there and what they're working on. They're like, that doesn't exist. You lying. This is no, I swear. Right? And so then she's showing them the emails, and they're like, yeah, what kind of company is that? Because no one has heard of the things that we do. So I actually wrote a book about how to do it.
Well,
So, and people ask me, well, why would you write a book and tell everybody the secret sauce? And I said, well, it's pretty simple, because most people won't do it. They don't have the patience to do it. They don't have the stamina to stick with it long enough. I mean, we've been doing it for 16 years. And to be a company that's between 5 and 10 million a year at 16 years is not common at all in small business.
no, not at all. So I'm curious, because you said part of what you so love is having that face-to-face interaction with the customer. But I think a lot of owners of businesses either can't get out of the day-to-day and they just get completely stuck in it, or they're so far removed, they have no idea what's going on with their company. It sounds like you've struck a balance there, and I'm curious how that happened.
There's ebb and flow. I mean, we're still small enough to where when, December of this last year, I lost 2 key employees, team members, excuse me.
Happens to the best of us. We're not
Well,
perfect.
right. So we ended up losing 2 people. Well, I haven't ended up replacing them, because one of the things that I'm finding out is that when you have somebody key in your organization that you rely on a day-to-day basis, sometimes you don't know what's going on. And so when things aren't working, when people are gone, then you start finding out the holes in the barrel, if you will. And so all of a sudden I'm looking around going, wow. I didn't know about that. I didn't know about this. I didn't know about that. And so I've actually been working on filling those holes.
Yeah.
Because there's leaks in our processes and procedures. And so needing to tighten those up. And then that way, once they're tightened again, then the next people we bring in, we can train them so that we don't get in the same situation again. So that's the first part. Now with that is that I was very good at working on the business. I could step out. I have a great team. 2 years ago, it might be 3 years now, I actually drove to Oklahoma and I actually remodeled my mom's kitchen. It was one of the worst houses I've ever worked on. Sorry, Mom. She knows it, right? Because we ran into every problem that you could
Sure.
possibly think about. I drove out there with one of our team members who happens to be a friend of mine, and him and I were there with my brother and my nephews. We did the demo. We found all these issues, but we had a week to be ready for the next phase, in which I was flying someone out to help me with the next phase. And then a week after that, I was flying someone out for the next phase. So we had a plan for doing it in 4 weeks. Well, while I was there working from 6 a.m. to 10 or later at night, every night, trying to get this thing done in 4 weeks, this team here functioned like a well-oiled machine. In the morning time, I spent text messaging, emails, phone calls with them just to kind of stay in tune with them and make sure that they didn't need anything that required me to be there. And everything went fine. So because of that, it allowed me to then take another step into ensuring that once a week I had a day that I did nothing but work on the business. And there was no set agenda. For my daily routine that I have my daily routine. I just do it.
Yeah.
It may be one of those things where I need to go out to Superstition Mountain and stare at the mountain, or sit in the cool of the pine trees and listen to the wind so it can clear your mind. Sometimes I'd go golfing, and in the middle of the summertime, in the middle of the day, you get a nice heavy sweat, and then you can think pretty clearly. So a lot of times, and this is something that I learned from my buddy that got me into this business, is that you have to get away. Because if you're in the grind trying to work on the business while you're here in the environment, it's very, very difficult to do. Sometimes it's sitting at Starbucks with the earbuds in and you're listening to a book or a podcast or something like that. It's just constantly looking at where you're at now and what's it going to take to go to the next level, and what are you going to do. One of the most important books that I've read, and it just was recently, and it was a recommendation from Coach Michael Burt, was Who, Not How, by Dan Sullivan.
Copy that.
And the premise of it is that, especially doers,
Yeah.
people that are doers, we want to know.
Yeah.
And I still want to know how, because I think if I understand the how, not that I'm going to go do it every day, but if I understand the how, then I know when it's broken. And I know what metrics I need to use to ensure that it's staying on track, right? So we use stoplight chairs, red, yellow, green.
Sure.
And so, you've got red needs immediate attention. Yellow says we're cautionary, right? We need to pay attention to this because it could go off the rails. And green says carry on.
Yeah.
No change is needed. So I am a firm believer in systems, processes. I tell people this all the time. If there's one thing that I know, I am 100% convinced that because of the process and procedures that we have implemented, and because of the unique experiences that we've had, there's no one better qualified to give someone a 5-star customer experience than Mariano Co. 100% convinced.
Yeah, myself as a business consultant that typically works with small business owners who are in a different space than you. They're really good at their one thing. Maybe they make the best cheeseburger in the world and decided to open a restaurant. Maybe they're a chiropractor and decided to open their own practice.
Yep.
But they never had the experience or the education on how to run the foundations, always talking about systems, always talking about having the right technology.
Making email.
And nowadays it's Dan Martell and By Your Time. It's
Finest book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
You're gonna love it, but I'll skip ahead and let you know you're already doing all the right.
That's like,
It's a wonderful take on it.
so that's a key point.
Yeah.
Because people go, well, why, it's where you're at right now. Why is it that you keep spending money on training? Well, just because you get training doesn't mean that you should drop everything you're doing and adopt what you just learned. Right? Because that could be something that you say, well, I appreciate the opinion, but I am not doing that, right? Or I've done that already and that doesn't work, right? So just because you have new information doesn't mean it's the right information for you to move forward. The other point would be, and this goes back to new entrepreneurs, the reason that you want to do this is because you get confirmation sometimes that you are on the right track. I mean, I came from the corporate world, and I had one of my team members, when we would interview people, he would tell them, the field team, he would tell them, you've never worked for a construction company like this. And I'm like, why does he always say that? And then the one day that I read E-Myth for Contractors, it dawned on me, right? Because my dad I didn't grow up in the trades. And you see a lot of contractors that their dad was the contractor or their uncle or their grandfather, and they skipped college and they didn't like school, high school. So they just was a plumber, electrician, or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden it was time for them to take over and they had no idea what to do. They were taking checks and spending it, but they didn't know, above the line versus below the line and fixed costs from gross margins or any of those types of things. Well, I had all of that in the corporate world. We had tens, hundreds of millions of dollars that we used to have to organizations that we were part of, so, you didn't get to take time off for learning those things. They taught it to you while you were there. So I only brought that with me when I stepped into this. I thought, well, it worked for me there. I'm going to put it in here. So that's a huge difference between Mariano and Co. and other construction companies. And it was just an accident. I mean, I just didn't know any better.
Yeah.
So
Yes, we would be remiss if I didn't go back to family for a second, because we talked about your kiddos.
yeah,
We barely touched on your wife, but I did want to ask you about the partnership and the relationship there, because I think for a lot of successful entrepreneurs, they talk about how important it is to have a partner in your life who is 100% bought into your craze. Because let's be honest, you feel a little crazy, I think, to want to open your own business and be an entrepreneur.
yeah.
So if you don't mind sharing, what's that conversation, that relationship, that support system look like between you and your wife?
Well, so we went to high school together. So she's the older woman. So
Perfect.
yeah. So I'll never forget when my freshman year, she was a junior, and so I come walking down the halls holding her hand, and the guys are like, "Wait a minute, what? What's going on there? What's happening here?" So she used to date the older guys, and so here she is with a freshman. So anyway, long story short is that we dated off and on throughout high school and then in college. And so when I got out of college, we got married up too. And so we lived in Sherman, Texas. I worked for Texas Instruments. This is a story about me coming out to Arizona. And what our deal is that we wanted her to be a stay-at-home mom. We wanted her to be with the kids. And that was important to us. And so when I got my opportunity to come out here, she was like, well, why would we want to go out there? And I said, one of the things I said was like, hey, well, I'll make enough money that we can start a family. She said, let's go.
All right.
So we ended up moving out here. She's been very supportive of all my craziness. And so I've done my part too on trying to screw everything up. And so I'm pretty good at doing that on a regular basis. So she tolerates me. No, but she's been very supportive. I think that the thing that was probably the most important part of our relationship was when I owned the first business. And so things were going so bad, and I was working 6 days a week and from, till sometimes 8, 10 o'clock at night, and it was going really bad. And I thought I was keeping it from her. But she knew.
Yeah.
And, after it was all over, she ended up going to get a job while I was just like, I was not in a good space. And so she actually stepped up. And so one of our conversations is like, why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, I didn't want to disappoint you. And, she said, yeah, but you thought that I didn't know, but you wear it all over you. And so it's not like I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that was just like, wow, okay, well, I thought I was really doing well at hiding this, but she knew all along. So trying to be more open and talk about things with her, it can be challenging at times because I'm very strong-willed. And once I decide I want to go do something, I'm going that direction.
Sure.
So, I don't talk about it a lot, but if there's problems, I'd like to think that I'm more open now at my older age than I was when I was younger.
Vulnerability is never an easy thing.
It's not, but I think that is actually is a leadership quality that people underestimate.
Yeah. I'm sure you and I both have been through so many versions of leadership training over the years. And the one that was my favorite was the first time anyone introduced the concept of emotional intelligence. And that was the basis of the framework for the rest of the training, because I feel you probably were similar to me in this. If you understand how to connect with people and where they're coming from and help understand their why, you can then easily articulate your why for yourself, for the company, and it just makes you that much stronger as a leader. I think that emotional intelligence, even today, is so undervalued.
I would agree. And I think that, because most people work for someone else.
Yeah.
And if you work for a big company, and not necessarily, I mean, I've never really worked for a small company. All of it's been corporate, Fortune 500 companies. But what happens is that you get in it and you're afraid to buck the system. People, you just get into a routine and you get lost in that, or you get jaded because of something that's happened to you in the corporate world. And you form this distrust in the system. And so, I mean, I did, and I was at the top of the list of it. I still lost faith in the people that I was working with. The backstabbing, the climbing over each other's back, all of that fighting for the promotions, all of those deals. I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It was a terrible situation. That was a very, very stressful time in my life. Not near as stressful as this is.
Yeah.
Right. So but it was a night and day difference. But I think when people come into a place, because my wife and I have conversations, well, if working for Mariano Co is so great, why do so many people leave? I said, you know what? That's a great question. I said, and here's what I believe. I believe that people aren't used to being treated well. And so they're so used to being mistreated by everybody, whether it's family or your company or all this, that they don't recognize it. And they look at it and go, this isn't normal. And so they go down the path, and it's like it could have been praying for it, right? Oh Lord, give me a change. And they come to this line in the road and go, okay, you can go this way or you can go this way. And they walk down the path, and for some reason they just don't want to take it, and they stop, they reverse, and they go back down to what's familiar to them. And that's, to me, is pretty sad. I've had so many people that have been through our doors that have had no father in their life, no father figure in their life. I'm old enough to be their dad type of deal. And I'm telling them, and if you keep making the same decisions that you're making, you're going to keep getting the same result. So you should stick with the program here and make something of yourself here, right? And if you want to go out and be a contractor someday, there's nobody better than us teaching you how to do that. Because at that point in time, maybe we actually hire you as one of them.
Yeah.
So that would be a great opportunity for somebody to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But they don't stick around all the time. So, but I think that's also part of the reason why I'm very patient, is because I don't want a whole office full of people like that.
Yeah.
Right. I want people that are committed to what it is that we're looking to do. They enjoy working for the clients. They enjoy the look on the face of a client whenever we turn their property back over to them. I mean, that's where it's at. I mean, it's like there's nothing that makes you feel better.
Your empathy and self-awareness is showing again.
Oh, is that? I write myself a note. Okay.
I'll send you this clip. Well, before I let you out of here, one more question for you. It's around advice, but I don't want to know necessarily what you would tell your younger self or what you want to leave as a message for your kids. I'm more curious about the advice that you perhaps took that you wish you didn't, or the worst advice you ever got. And the reason I ask that is in our world today, we have no shortage of just content coming at us. Influencers and successful people on the internet that are saying, you have to do this and try this. And there's so much advice and stuff like that coming our way. Is there any advice that you got coming up where you thought that's the worst piece of advice I've ever heard and ignored it? Or is there a piece of advice that you took and upon reflection said, oh, I probably shouldn't have listened to that person?
Yeah, I would say that coming up from an entrepreneurial point of view is that if I tend to trust people first.
Mm.
And I probably would be a little bit more guarded and do some fact checking before I actually made some decisions that I made in the past, whether I would do it. And you can, to your point, right? So when you get bombarded every day, right? Last year, I took chances on several different companies, marketing companies, and I actually hired 2 different ones in 2 different platforms so that I can figure out this, because I didn't want to mess around. I wanted to know if it was going to work. Well, neither one of them worked. And it was just like, wow, I mean, how did I get sucked into that? Well, the person that I'm in with now tells me one day, he says, I get the impression from you that, you hear something and if you like it, you're in. And I'm like, I don't think I like the way that sounded, right? I mean, it sounded like, but I was quick to pull the trigger on some these things. And I probably should have done a little bit more homework. And so I think that would be my advice, is that, especially if you're starting out as an entrepreneur, because you don't have a lot of cash. So I didn't have a lot of cash when I started this business. Really did. Yeah, it was. I did a lot of the work myself, and wore all the hats. So you know, you just have to make sure that you're getting as much information that you can to make the best decision you can. But you're never going to get 100%.
Yeah.
Because what does Coach Burt say? The planning department is where dreams go to fail. And so I was like, wow, he said that the first time. I was like, ooh, that one stung a little bit. Right. So I'd like to think that I would be, if I can get 80% and then I can go 20 on the gut. Some people say you should do 60-40. I'd probably get some ulcers if I tried to do it.
I agree. So what I'm hearing is trust but verify.
That is one of my number one things, right, is to tell people is that, and the verifying part of it doesn't mean that they have to know you're looking.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate
Next time.
it. Yeah, enjoyed it.